the Friday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show, right here on AM 830 WCRN. As we just click through August, right? We're past the halfway point. I've said this, man, the year's flying, but there's always so much going on, so much to talk about. That might have something to do with it. Don't forget, you can join the conversation over the next hour at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. That's how you get into the studio for two-way talk and conversation. You also might notice the new fedora today if you're watching, and you can watch and listen to the show and then watch it on the Cameo Cam on my social media platforms at Joe Mangi Show, M-A-N-G-I. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. But you can also watch it on YouTube channel, LinkedIn, and even Twitch TV at Joe M Show, sporting the new blue fedora today. So check that out. Our text line is up and running at 617-297-8388, 617-297-8388, or email me at textjoe@gmail.com. It appears on the same screen in real time. And the station's always live streaming on the TuneIn app. That's right, 24/7 WCRN is streaming, so you can listen to not just the Joe Mangiacotti Show, but Peter Blute, Mike Wade, Jerry Doherty, Hank in the Morning, and Howie Carr. You can listen to all of our great guests and shows 24/7 here on the TuneIn app. All right, 508-871-7000. We will have a guest joining us in the second segment, Teza Duran. She is a policy analyst for the American Consumer Institute. She's going to talk to us about really how this bill and how things are going to affect the average family. Basically, the inflation will cost families about $4,400 a year in purchase power. And we'll get into that with her. And I'm going to talk about the bill as well. But the latest on what's happening down here in Mar-a-Lago and with the Trump situation. And earlier today, as I've mentioned in the past, and it's come up, I do another weekly show called the Frontiers of Freedom Report. And as my new position as a senior fellow with the Frontiers of Freedom organization in D.C., it's something that I participate in. And part of today's conversation, we were talking about what's happening down there and how this affects and plays out. And there's clearly, folks, a very obvious dual application of the law going on in this country. And it's become so flagrant and so obvious. It's not something, and we see that they don't even try to hide or to be cute about it. And you got to look at, as I always tell you folks, right, you got to look at things from the 30,000-foot view of all the moving parts and how things are happening and what is the timing on everything and how does this all happen. Now, of course, the latest thing out of this, we saw a kind of this, from a small faction of people, defund the FBI, right, which I think is a knee-jerk reaction to defund the police. We can't defund the FBI, but we certainly can clean house and make some changes. If we look at the history of the FBI, we can find example after example, and I'm not talking about since Trump came on the scene, right? We knew what the FBI was doing in the 60s and the 70s, that deals that, whether it was Hoover or whoever, cutting deals with the presidents of the time, right down to being able to wiretap Martin Luther King and spy on him. They have a long history of maybe overstepping the powers that they were granted. Maybe the powers that the FBI needs to be dialed back. Maybe that's it. I'm not sure whether that is the answer, whether that's the first step that we take, but there's certainly so much evidence about high-level officials within the FBI that wield a lot of power and have abused that power from time to time on many occasions, in that they act more as a political cabal than they do as an officer or a very special agent in the FBI. You see the guy who orchestrated the phony kidnapping against Governor Whitmer doesn't get reprimanded, doesn't get fired, doesn't get a note in his file, but he actually gets a promotion and he's reassigned to deputy in charge in the Washington office, and he's part of this raid on Mar-a-Lago. So shortly before the 2016 election, Mike Pence tweeted out that real Donald Trump and I commend the FBI for reopening an investigation into Clinton's personal server because no one is above the law. It seems that she is, because the report of her interview was written, and we later find out, before the interview. And they admitted that they changed the verbiage to lessen the charges. So they doctored all documents, altered documents, and doctored papers because, again, political leanings. So we have this record, this history. We saw the FBI and DOJ alter documents and forge documents in front of the Pfizer court. Bold-faced lie to judges to get warrants to place surveillance, i.e. spying. And what did the media concentrate on when Donald Trump came out and said they wiretapped me? They concentrated on his antiquated term wiretap, because nobody wiretaps you. And that comes from the days when they would, the FBI agents would literally climb a telephone pole and tap into your phone lines. Today, the NSA pulls your call right out of the air. Right? It's on a cell phone. Even if it's not on the cell phone, at some point it's going through a satellite somewhere to get routed. So it's very easy to do. So what's going on there? What's happening down at Mar-a-Lago when they raided, and now this whole warrant business, and the judge is saying, I'm going to release it, but it's going to be very redacted, parts of it. One of the biggest problems I have with that warrant, and I don't know how many of you either realize this, read this, heard this, but the dates on the warrant was from the day President Trump was sworn in as president to his last day in office. That's 4 years, people. Warrants are supposed to be narrow, specific. You're supposed to have very detailed on what it is that you're looking for. And way back in my earliest law classes I took, we were told, plus my father reinforced this to me growing up on the warrant, that if you're looking for a stolen 47-inch TV and you break in, wow, that was a Freudian slip. You go into the home of the suspect, you can't go through drawers. You can't be opening their drawers in their desks or their dresser or what have you, because you can't hide a 47-inch TV in there. And that if you did open a drawer and you found incriminating evidence, you didn't have a warrant for that. And it fell outside the purview of the warrant. Therefore, it was the fruit of the tree and inaccessible. So over the years, they expand these warrants and so forth. But to put a warrant with the dates for the entire time that he was president is nothing but a fishing expedition with the widest possible net that they could cast over this guy. So if that's the case and that's the warrant, it says that they can look for and take anything that happened or had to do with the 4 years he was president. And that's just ludicrous. Absolutely crazy to be allowing that warrant to even go through this. So have we fully, and the day after, last Tuesday, I said, I woke up yesterday in what I still kind of thought was America, and Tuesday morning I woke up in what seemed to be, we've crossed the line into a banana republic. Because we are seeing time after time the politicization of our law enforcement and even our bureaucracy, right? Bureaucratic agencies, EPA, FDA, CDC, all those agencies, which have we find out has more to do with your political leanings than anything else. 508-871-7000. Before we got to go to a break and switch topics, let me right into the conversation. Jazz, we have Mark on the phone. Mark waiting patiently. Hey, Mark, what say you?
Yeah, how are you? You hear me all right?
I do, sir.
All right, I'll get right to the point. Won't waste your valuable time. We still got 2,000 signatures short to get the ballot initiatives on the ballot about the illegal aliens being granted by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts valid driver's licenses. There's only a week left. We're 2,000 short as of 9 o'clock this morning from on in here to the grapevine. So there's nothing you can do about the FBI, but there is something you can do about it: the issuance of illegal aliens getting driver's licenses in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We can all get off our butts, and this weekend it's going to be a beautiful weekend. Get in your cars, go to fairandsecureMA.com, and they'll tell you where the petitioners are, so you can go there and sign that damn petition. We're only 2,000 short, but we only got a week left. So you got to get off your butts, and you got to get out there, and you got to do something about this.
Hey, Mark, you heard that this morning only because I thought I heard on Howie Carr's show yesterday that we had passed the threshold, that we had enough, but that apparently you heard different this morning somewhere?
Well, I don't know. I heard it on Jeff Cooner on WRKO. I don't know where he got his information from, if he got it from Jim Lyons, chairman of the Republican Party, Mass. I know they have a close relationship. He might have got it from there, but that's what he reported this morning.
Right.
They're saying that they need 2,000 more, and we only got like a week left.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. I got to hold you there. We got to come up to the break that we have no
All
control over. I'll see if I can find any more information about that, but it doesn't matter, folks. We need extra signatures because a lot will get disqualified. Quick break. We'll come back, and we're going to be joined by Tirza in just a few moments. Stick with us.
Dr. Satya Mitra has journeyed from a childhood of poverty and homelessness to a successful career as a financial advisor, motivational speaker, and community leader. Now inspired by his guru, he uses his experiences to positively affect the lives of underprivileged people. We strive to house our blindness, poverty, homelessness, female empowerment, and good citizenship initiatives within the Joy Guru Humanitarian Center. If you wish to contribute or know deserving persons or initiatives that could use our assistance, please contact us at 508-641-8441.
Lower temperatures often bring that little scraping and clawing sound in your ceilings and walls. You know the one. Time to call ProTech Pest Control, the pest extermination service of Worcester County. Fully licensed and insured to handle any job. With ProTech Pest Control, you're guaranteed a quick response with flexible appointments. Enjoy the benefits of living in a pest-free environment. Call 508-757-2409 or visit protechpestcontrol.com.
Hi, I'm Lee Gaudette from the Gaudette Insurance Agency, a third-generation company located in Whitensville, with branch locations in Grafton, Southborough, Westborough, and Shrewsbury. We are a full-service independent agency offering all aspects of insurance to businesses, industry, and individuals. Stop in and see us at any of our locations for a free assessment of your insurance needs. Also, listen to WCRN on Friday mornings at 9:30 for our radio show.
Formed in 1991 by Dr. Jack Newman of Springfield College, the Massachusetts Senior Games kindled the Olympic spirit and ignited the flame for thousands of older adults across the Commonwealth. The Massachusetts Senior Games is a nonprofit organization. We're comprised primarily of volunteers with a few specialized support staff for critical logistics. We promote the health and fitness of older adults in the Commonwealth through health education programs, fitness activities, and competitive athletic events. Listen for more details on competitions and the results of our upcoming season.
This is the Joe Mangiacotti Show. We are the show you want to know. It's time to talk to Joe.
All right, folks, welcome back to the second segment of the Friday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN. And don't forget, we're live streaming on the TuneIn app. If you don't have it, seconds to download the app, and then it's on your device, and you can take us anywhere. Punch in WCRN, and there we are. Do me a favor and hit that like button so that we know you're there. And you can join the conversation at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. The text line is 617-297-8388. And as promised, I'd like to invite into the conversation Tirza Durin, who is a policy analyst for the American Consumer Institute. And Tirza writes on technology and regulatory issues. And prior to going to the ACH, she worked for the premier policy think tank in Pennsylvania, where she focused on economic and fiscal policy. Additionally, she has experience working with think tanks around the globe and has been fortunate to witness firsthand the positive impacts policy can have on individual lives. Now, she has a BA in anthropology from Eastern Oregon University, MA in international studies from the University of San Francisco, and having professional experience in economic research departments across the various think tanks. So, Tirza, welcome to the show. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule and joining us today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
So I gotta tell you, this Inflation Reduction Act, which in the big picture of things is really one of the biggest, in my opinion, bait and switches we've seen, because it's really a lot of the Green New Deal policy in there, and even Joe Manchin admitted it's more of a climate bill than anything else, and it really isn't going to do anything to reduce inflation anytime soon. As a matter of fact, the Tax Foundation says so. They, not only do they say it's not going to reduce it, but about 29,000 full-time jobs in the United States are going to be lost, and it will also reduce the average after-tax income for taxpayers across every income branch that there is. And that their analysis estimates on the budgetary, economic, and distribution impacts of the Inflation Reduction Act, as they call a bill, was amended and was passed in the Senate and agreed upon in the House. What comes down to a type of tax, because inflation, even though income has inched up, inflation has increased faster than that, and that reduces purchase power. So this report saying that inflation will cost families about $4,400 this year alone, can you break that down a little bit and explain to our listeners what we're in for here?
Yes. So the American Consumer Institute released a report, and keep in mind this was prior to the Inflation Reduction Act being passed. But what we looked at is we looked at the recent causes and the adverse consequences for consumers that inflation had had. And the $4,400 number that you mentioned was actually a very conservative estimate. And basically what we did is we used data from the consumer expenditures, from the personal income and outlay surveys. And then we looked at the cost of inflation to consumers. And so that was really measured by inflation minus wages. Then we took that cost and multiplied it by the expenditures in order to get the number of 4,400. And really what that number says is that the average U.S. household will lose out on that purchasing power by the end of the year. And again, keep in mind that was, oh, sorry.
No, I was going to ask you what you, I think, was about to say. Is keep in mind this was before this bill was passed.
Exactly, and it was also a very conservative estimate. We used the average inflation pain of the past 6 months, which is about 3.2% for that calculation. But if you had used the average or the averages from the last 12 or 18 months, that percentage was like 6 points. So it was a conservative estimate before the Inflation Reduction Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act just pours more money into certain industries in the economy, which was one of the causes of inflation that we addressed in the report.
Wow, $4,400. That is a lot of money. Well, it should be a lot of money to most people, but I'll go along with if you're making 400, 500,000, not as much. But that's not what the average income is in this country. It's substantially lower. It's under $100,000. And I think, what is it, 68,000 or 70, somewhere in the 68 to 72. I don't know what the latest is. Maybe you do.
It's in that range, yeah. And it's varies by location. So but I think as a national average, it's within that range.
Right. So here we have that the biggest problem facing the United States is inflation. I mean, we have a lot of problems, but inflation can be crippling to so many families, as record price increases have made it hard for families to make the ends meet. Um, so the factors that created the inflationary spiral and what can be done to help lower prices for consumers, I guess a lot of people are asking that. As Joe Manchin said when he got called in the hallway after this, oh, we didn't say it was going to lower it. It's not going to lower it anytime soon. That's not an on and off switch, but we know that. But inflation comes as a result of too much money being printed out there, right? It's a goods and services issue. So the question I guess people ask is, how do we stop the spiral? How do we stop the inflation? And is it possible to get that purchase power back? Can we reduce or set the clock back on the inflation? I don't really remember that happening in a substantial way ever.
Yeah, when we're talking about inflation, there's a lot of causes. The report that I mentioned from the American Consumer Institute, we talk about three. One of them being the stimulus spending, which really resulted in a demand pool and drove prices up through increased consumption within the economy without increasing the supply. And so when we focus mainly on the stimulus spending, which totaled about $6 trillion, and the Inflation Reduction Act is more government spending, slightly different. It's more targeted to specific industries, but it's not a shift away from the same policies that caused the problem in the first place. And I know you mentioned the inflation really impacting the lower income consumers, or the $4,400 not that big of a deal if you made a bunch or a lot more money. But it's the same with inflation throughout the last couple of years that we've been talking about. One of the major things that we've seen is and one thing that was notable in the report is that for households making $15,000, because of the really high energy inflation, which averaged about 40% at one point, they are actually having to spend around 80% of their income on energy and transportation. So again, that's really, when you see these inflation and you see it driving up costs, it's really impacting the low income consumers the most because they have the least disposable income.
My thought is always, do they have any disposable income? Because we know that there is just incident after incident where these decisions, and even before we got into this bad, recognizing the inflation rate and the gas price was going up. In Tuesday, I've always said the gas is the most direct effect on the middle class, right? If gas goes up a few pennies or even $1 or $2 a gallon, if you're really wealthy, you absorb it. It doesn't change your life. If you're on the very low income bracket, chances are maybe you don't even have a car, and you probably live in an urban area, or maybe you don't even work because you're on an SSI or whatever the case is. So a lot of times it's the people who have to go to work every day. It's not an option. They have to go to work because they have to keep the roof over their head. They have to keep the food on the plate. Maybe they have a couple of kids, right? And when the gas goes up, they don't have a choice of whether they get to drive to work or not. They don't have a choice of doing that. And so when your gas bill goes up $60 a week, $200 a month, something has to sacrifice. And the first things that go are maybe the cable packages, and then the cheerleading or football or band or what have you. But choices have to be made. And these are kitchen table conversations, kitchen table decisions that have to be made, and has a direct impact on that family. So that's when I see gas prices go up. And then when you kind of told that's all by design, that they want that to hurt, they need the pain to force us to buy green, what they call green cars, but electric cars, anything but green. That's one thing. But now when you add this crippling inflation across the board, middle class and lower income middle class are absolutely are going to pay for this, and and now the advent of the 87,000 IRS agents, will your organization look at this now at all? Can we expect any kind of report or study coming into how this is going to affect people with 87,000 on top of that? So giving the IRS about 165,000 enforcement agents.
The American Consumer Institute really focuses on policies that directly
About a
impact
minute.
So that's a wide range of issues, and we're definitely going to be focusing on inflation. We're definitely going to continue to focus on energy because, like you said, decisions have to be made when energy prices go up. People don't really have the choice to not pay for electricity, pay for heating, pay for air conditioning, or whatever those costs might be. A lot of those are pretty set. And so when the price of energy goes up, including gas and electricity in all its forms, it really does impact consumers directly, particularly those who don't have as much flexibility within their budget. But also something to consider is that prices and energy is one of the fundamental inputs throughout the supply chain. So it's not just a matter of electricity bills going up. It's a matter of electricity bills and energy prices going up throughout the entire supply chain, which drives costs of all the other goods up as well. And so that is definitely an issue that the Consumer Institute is going to continue to focus on.
All right. Tirza, we are against the clock. Where can people find your institute or find any of the work that you're putting out? Is there a website to go to?
Yes, if you're interested in any more of our work, you can find us at theamericanconsumer.org or on Twitter, and it's at ConsumerPal.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Tirza, for joining us. I appreciate it. All right, folks, back in a few minutes. Stick with us.
Time now for the forecast from the Boston Independence Group Weather Center. Call Jerry Doherty today at 877-772-1776. Retirement is within reach.
I'm meteorologist Jason Brewer. Here's the latest Boston 25 weather on Radio 830 WCRN. Summer is back, mostly sunny, dry today. Highs in the upper 80s to the lower 90s. Partly cloudy tonight, lows in the mid-60s. Then tomorrow, partly cloudy skies, just a slight chance for an afternoon shower popping up. Highs around 90. I'm Jason Brewer. You can hear Boston 25 live for the morning drive weekdays on AM 830 WCRN.
Don't put mercury in the trash. Don't put mercury in the trash. Fluorescent lamps. Fluorescent lamps. Thermometers. Thermometers. Thermostats. Thermostats. These could all contain mercury, so let's dispose of them properly. Don't put mercury in the trash. Don't put mercury in the trash. Know your products with mercury, so you can dispose of them properly. Mercury is harmful to human health and the environment. To learn what products in your home may contain mercury and where to safely dispose of them, please contact your local Board of Health or Department of Public Works or visit keepmercuryfromrising.org. Know your products with mercury, so you can dispose of them properly.
Visit keepmercuryfromrising.org because together we can keep our environment safe. Brought to you by Win Waste Innovations. Performance for the planet.
This refreshing moment brought to you by Polar Seltzer. Polar Seltzer is naturally calorie-free with no sweeteners or sodium. Family made since 1882. Made with just water, zillions of tiny bubbles, and all natural fruit essences. Add some sparkle to your day, every day. Find us at your local grocery store or online at polarseltzer.com.
This is the Joe Mangiacotti Show. We are the show you want to know. It's time to talk to Joe.
All right, folks, welcome back to the second half of the Friday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN. Don't forget, we are live streaming on the TuneIn app. The station is 24/7. So if you don't have it on your device, really, download it. Seconds to do that. Just put in WCRN. Download it. You have it there. Do me a favor. Hit the like button so we know you're there. And then it's very easy to find. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Again, I want to thank Tirza and Duran for joining us for a segment there to talk about this. And like I said, boy, what was interesting is that the $4,400 in reduction in purchase power to the typical American family. This report was done prior to this cluster that was passed, which and remember, it wasn't called the Inflation Reduction Act originally. They literally did an overnight change, right? It was a whole different bill. We went to bed and we woke up the next day and it was called the Inflation Reduction Act. And the media went along with it, pretended that's what it always was. And really, this is a climate bill. And now you have the talking heads on the left taking victory laps that this is the most significant, largest climate bill ever passed by the United States. It instills a tremendous amount of power into bureaucracies. All right. Now, I'm not just talking about the IRS one, which I think we've all kind of heard it. We've heard the $80 billion, the 87,000, 57% of that $80 billion going to enforcement to the IRS, already probably the most feared agency on the planet. But it also infuses other agencies, the EPA, CDC, FDA, with tons of money, more money than they've ever had before, and more power. And I've always talked about this, folks, and I can't stress it enough, that we have bureaucrats, right? These people in these agencies, and they're pretty much lifetime appointments. As we know, it's next to impossible to lose a federal job. And the federal government, the United States federal government, is the largest employer on the planet and the largest union on the planet. It even employs more people than the Chinese government. And now you've empowered bureaucrats with what basically equates to law. When the EPA, FDA, they make these rules that you have to follow, they have the effect of law, even though we didn't elect them. They're not lawmakers that we elected, yet they have the ability to control your lives. There's something fundamentally wrong with that. We saw the CDC overstep its power, its authority, right? They started to tell private landlords. And despite what they may spin or you think, landlords aren't these mustache twirling, top wearing hat, monopoly type guys with tons of money, and they're just cruel, mean people. Speaking as a former landlord here on multiple properties, no, it's a balancing act. To hold on to that piece of property, you need the income from that property to keep it going. And for the CDC to come out and say, you don't have to pay your rent. And the court found that, way overstepping. Because that just is so not inside the purview of your authority. Stay in your lane. What does that health have anything to do with that? And how do you expect, is it going to be a domino effect here? So if you can tell people you don't have to pay your landlord, does the landlord then be able to tell the financial institution who actually owns the property and holds the mortgage over your head, they don't have to pay you, and you can't do anything about it? So that means shareholders of that institution have to take it on the chin there. You see what I'm saying? Is it's where does it end? And who ends up holding the bag? So it all ends up being a taxpayer's bailout. So it all comes back and spread over all of us again for that. Like, how does that work? Same thing with paying people's student loan debt. Where does that thought even come up, other than the extreme left and the woke crowd, right? The squad and so forth, that thinks that's a good idea. These are people who clearly do not understand money. They just don't get it. They don't know where it comes from. They don't know how it's made, and they don't know how to use it properly. And why should anybody else? Because remember, the government doesn't make money. Yeah, they physically make it. They print it. But they don't sell anything or manufacture anything. Every cent that the United States government has to spend has been taken from somebody else. They're just redistributing money. They're taking it from you, or they're taking it from corporations. They're taking it from small businesses, and they redistribute it through to other people. So they don't have it. They didn't earn it. So who has the right to tell people you don't have to pay your student debt? We're going to take the taxes that we take from everybody, and that's going to include a good number of people who either couldn't go to college or university because they didn't have the money, or didn't go because they didn't want to sign on that dotted line and take on that financial responsibility. And then you've got the group of people, whether they worked night and day, right? They worked night jobs to go to school at daytime or vice versa. They worked, day to go to night, night to go to day, whatever. The point is they held a job, they paid their tuition, they didn't go to the fancy school, or their parents and their family sacrifices to send them to school. And they did it right. And that mom and dad didn't upgrade the house, didn't take 1 or 2 family vacations, didn't buy a newer car. They held on to that other car for another 3 or 4 years, right? Maybe the other kids sacrificed in some extracurricular activities to make sure that Mary or Joey or whoever could go to college. Whatever the case is, they did it the right way, and they got them through their college education. And they're not being told, oh, we're going to pay you back, by the way. No, if you already paid it, thank you very much. But we're just going to do it to the people who signed on the dotted line and just don't want to pay. And then there's a certain amount of responsibility, I think, that has to go back to the universities, don't it? Because as student loans became more available and they got taken over by the federal government and they were guaranteed, didn't tuition go up faster than anything else? We talk about inflation, but let's look at the rate of tuition and how fast that went up and how many times over that's gone up. And for what? What are you paying for? Somebody like Elizabeth Warren to be, $380,000 to teach one class? For them to have mass amount of prime real estate with no taxes? For them to keep manicured lawns and so forth? And especially where so much education has moved to online. Majority, like 90+% of my degrees have been from online or night school or something. It's the traditional system, going off the 4 years. It's very expensive. So I kind of got off tangent here, but point is, there's a
You've got Ken from Bolton and Joe from Millis.
Amount of power in these bureaucracies. 508-871-7000. Let's go to the phones. Jazz, who's up first?
Ken from Bolton.
All right, Ken from Bolton. Good afternoon, Ken. What say you?
Good afternoon, Joe. I'm interested in continuing your opening discussion on the biggest story of our life. And we've had 10 and a half days now to figure out what in the world was going on in Mar-a-Lago last Monday. And this week it appears increasingly likely that the people doing the raid are doing CYA, meaning they're in a lot of trouble. They're in a lot of trouble with what they did in the past. So here's a headline: FBI unit that raided Trump's home is focus of Durham investigation. So you brought up the topic of the general warrant, which is a violation of the Fourth Amendment, which everybody in the media should be screaming at the top of their lungs because this threatens our republic. But the point is, the people doing the raid were probably, almost certainly, involved with the Russian collusion hoax that goes all the way back to the beginning of the presidency of Trump back in January of 2017. And that's why they want to do a sweep all the way back then to find out what he had so they could interfere his in any way mentioning what he has. That's what this is all about. Big corruption ring in the Department of Justice.
I agree. The fact that this warrant was anything but narrow, within a scope, or targeted. It was none of that. The warrant, guys, the date on the warrant is from the day he took office to the day he left office. any real judge, and this goes back to the issue of judge shopping, right? This judge was no mistake. He was a huge, or is a huge anti-Trumper type person, right? And he was only recently back into the system, right, after taking a stint as a private attorney and for all people for the firm that handled, Jeffrey Epstein's workers, right? He was defending guys like the pilot who flew the miners to the island and that kind of thing. But the fact is that I don't think that warrants of this magnitude should be allowed for one judge, Ken. I think that judge shopping should be eliminated. And one way to do that is that you need a panel. You need 2 or 3. I would be happy with 3 judges. 3 different judges have got to hear that, have to see the affidavits, hear the arguments, ask the questions, challenge it. And if you can get it by 3 judges, then that's probably a pretty good warrant. Because there's going to be at least one of those 3 judges who's going to say, wait a minute, you're saying, what are you doing? This is a fishing expedition. You're saying you can look at everything and take anything for a 4-year period? You clearly don't know what you're going after. And I agree 100%, Ken. People, the media should be pointing this out, and we should be very, very concerned about it, because that means a warrant can come to us. To be, we can look at everything for the last 10 years.
30 seconds.
It doesn't have it. Ken, good point. I got to hold you there because we're against the clock, folks. So we're going to take our third and final break here on the Friday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. I know we have phone calls holding, so when we come back, we'll go right to the phones here on the Friday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Don't forget to follow us on our social media platforms at Joe Mangi, M-A-N-G-I, Joe Mangi Show. I'll be back in a moment, folks. Stick with us.
Chris Thompson here, station manager at WCRN. I need salespeople. If you're retired or a stay-at-home mom looking to make a few extra dollars, this opportunity is perfect for you. Work part-time, set your own schedule. It's fun. We provide the training you need to succeed. The only thing better than listening to Howie Carr is selling Howie Carr. If you're outgoing, not afraid to learn new things, and would like to earn some extra money, call me at 870-5803, extension 222. Start making money selling radio.
WCRN is an equal opportunity employer.
You're on your way home and you get the call. We need milk. And how about some snacks to watch TV tonight? Where do you go? No matter where you are in Central Mass or Metro West, you can find what you need at a Yetco Food
Joe
Mart.
from
Not
Millis.
to mention great gas prices. You can fill up the gas tank and get all your snack needs as well as milk, and all at competitive prices that won't empty the wallet. Yetco Food Mart, serving you best for over 25 years. Yetco.
I had been
Back
unable
in 1
to have
minute.
conversation.
I was blaming my family whispering.
I used to spend all the time saying, what?
If you or a loved one can identify with this, the hearing aid specialists Peter and Alex Lee at Professional Hearing on 33 Lyman Street in Westboro can correct or restore your hearing. Don't miss out on what you're not hearing. Call Peter and
Oh, I
Alex Lee
haven't. Let me
at
check now.
508-366-8686 or on the web at prohearinghealth.com.
The difference is amazing.
If you have a hearing loss and you don't have it corrected, you're losing out.
I would recommend Professional Hearing and Mr. Lee to anyone who experiences a hearing problem.
To find out if you have a hearing loss, call today, 508-366-8686, or go to prohearinghealth.com. Professional Hearing in Westboro. Schedule your free consultation now.
This is the Joe Mangiacotti Show. We are the show you want to know. It's time to talk to Joe.
All right, folks, welcome back to the fourth and final segment of the Friday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN. Don't forget, live streaming on the TuneIn app. Bunch of WCRN. Do me a favor, hit that like button so we know you're there. And you can join the conversation at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. And I'm live streaming on my social media platform so you can watch and listen to the show at the same time. And I am at the Cameo studio, so we're on the Cameo cam, and Jazz is back at HQ flying the board. All right, let's go to Joe in Millis, who's been waiting patiently. Hey, Joe. Good afternoon, sir. What say you?
Joe, thanks for taking my call. In regards to the political weaponization of, the FBI and the Justice Department, and now the IRS is going to be heavily politicized with 87,000 new Democrats to go after political opponents. My final rant is going to be on the Postal Service. They provided Joe Biden with a lot of, backup. They promoted his campaign. And not only that, there's story after story of them dumping ballots. And, if you're a Republican or a conservative and you're going to trust a mail-in ballot to reach its destination, you're wishing upon a star, because how many, you might trust your postman or you might trust your individual post office, but your ballot is going to go past so many different people, and it's ultimately end up going to hit someone on a rogue, that's a rogue employee of the post office, and they're going to trash it. They're going to throw it in the rubbish. And there's story after story on the internet of them doing just the same. No ramifications, no repercussions. It's just another part of the machine, Joe, that they're going to use against us.
And folks, for listeners, Joe, who might not know what you're talking about, is that during the 2020 campaign and even 2016, there were incidences where boxes, like large boxes of ballots of mail, were found tossed on the side of the road. And what was interesting, some of those stories that came out about this, they were, say, New York ballots, but they were thrown off the side of the road in New Jersey, which they shouldn't even been on that route. And then the other aspect of this is the ballot should have, Joe, no indication on the exterior. You should not be able to tell what party that ballot is. Yet we know.
Yeah, but it goes beyond that, Joe.
Out of California,
okay,
there were
sorry.
incidences where things were marked. And here in Massachusetts, right, we had that it was marked with red and blue. And in California, the way that you had to fold it and put it back in, you could tell the party. So that means you have these mail-in ballots that are coming back in that, if you know what you're looking at, you know whether that's a Democratic ballot or that it's coming from a registered Democrat or a registered Republican. And you can take a pretty good guess who they're probably voting for president. Doesn't mean they are, but given their party affiliation. So, yes, could you decide that that ballot's never going to make it back into where it's get counted? That could happen. So there's the issue of, if it is a mail-in ballot, and I have the strong opinions, I don't believe in mass mailing ballots at all. There's no justification for it. It wasn't broken in the first place, Joe. In other words, if you could not go to the polling place or did not want to go to the polling place, whatever your reason, you could call up your town clerk or city clerk and say, I want a mail-in ballot. I want to vote that way. Now, it used to be that you had to give a reason, which I never agreed with, even when that was the case before the pandemic. But they did away with that, which I'm fine with, because I think if you just don't want to go, you should be able to do it. It should be very easy. But this mass mailing, to send them out to everybody, is ludicrous. And it's a
recipe for disaster.
Absolutely.
Joe, may I mention?
Drop-off boxes, right? No reason in the world, because we have something called a mailbox. We already have mailboxes. If you're going to send it, you mail it. You do not drop it in this unsecure, unmonitored drop-off box, as the 2,000 Mules demonstrated. Somebody can drive up in the middle of the night and stuff boxes of ballots in there. Joe, you're going to say?
There's another. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but there's another slant to this. Say if they make all the ballots undeterminable, what kind of persuasion you are. If you have a rogue mailman, he sees you getting mail from Republican National Committee. Mm-hmm. So even if your ballot is indescriptive of party, I mean, he pretty knows, through your mailing where you lean. So not even that is secure to a rogue Postal Service that we know now that
Yard
they're in the
sign,
Democratic.
right?
Pardon?
Your mailman's going to see, what if you had a yard sign? And now the FBI comes out with this list of symbols that can be considered extremist or dangerous. And what's on there? The Betsy Ross flag, the Don't Tread on Me flag. So what if you're just patriotic, right? So like you said, if you have this leftist mailman or mail person out there, and they deliver to your house all the time, and you have certain yard signs in your yard, or even if you have an American flag and maybe you have another flag, right? But what you don't have is you don't have a Black Lives Matter flag. You don't have a rainbow flag. You don't have a, what's that, coexist flag or something like that.
Right.
They can make assumptions, and they may just decide not to take the chance that your ballot just isn't going to make it there because you might not be on board with them. Absolutely. I think I get what you're saying. I think the listeners understand what you're saying. But the point is, you have the option of mailing that you call up, you get that ballot. And if you don't get it, right, you call up, you get it, they're going to send it to you. But then you don't have to give it to your mail person. You can drop it in the mailbox. You can drop it off at City Hall. You can do a lot of other things, ways to get it out.
Or you can get down the vote. You can get down there and vote in person.
I agree. Look, I think that 100% that the way to vote is to physically go down there and cast your vote. Now, that being said, if for whatever reason you have a health reason, you can't stand, you can't, absolutely do the absentee. Maybe you're literally away. I don't care what the reason is. That's fine. But I think that the first thing we should all try to do is to go there. And the other thing, Joe, when we get to the polling place, nobody can justify to me why the counting machine that counts your votes at the scene there, at the polling place, needs to be internet capable. It does not need to be. This is the most basic computer that we have. It counts. I think that our voting should be never done electronically. It should always be a paper trail to back it up, meaning that you check the box, circle in the circle, punch the hole, whatever that is, but it's not electronic. We don't use a screen because we've seen the video of people taking a video of them trying to vote, hitting the candidate and the machine defaulting to another candidate right there, doing it. So any electronics at the polling place, I feel, should not be allowed. Somebody should get a bill passed saying it's up to the state, but the states cannot use these large voting systems. You know what we did for a couple hundred years before we had the internet and computers? We voted. And in those days, Joe's, it wasn't, elections weren't considered to be messed with on the voting, right? They were, they were messed with intimidation tactics and going down and paying the drunks. You go vote for who we want you to vote, and you go down to this bar and you get a free drink waiting for you. I mean, that happened.
But how do we trust our Secretary of State, Joe, when he held back overseas ballots from our military personnel in lieu of helping John Kerry win the 2004 election? My son was sitting in Iraq while our Secretary of State didn't even bother to count his vote, didn't even bother to get their ballots out. That's disgusting. He should have resigned right then and there. But no, he kept winning elections. And this is the Secretary of State we have overseeing our elections. It's disgraceful, it's disgusting, and it's corruptive. And we need to clean up our agencies in this state.
Absolutely. And on that note, Joe, the thing here is, okay.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joan. Thank you for the call. And just on what Joe said there, here's the thing on that, as far as I feel, folks, is the Constitution's pretty clear that the elections are up to the states, and that's the way it should be, which fortunately I think kind of have squashed this movement to federalize the elections at one point here. We certainly don't want that, because we will be in a situation where our candidates, and therefore our elected officials, are actually anointed and not elected. But I think that the federal government has the right, and maybe in the Constitution, ability to make sure that those elections are actually fair and done correctly. So if you do have a situation where there's a Secretary of State who holds back ballots, and let's face it, the feeling is, or the understanding, right? I guess we could agree that the common attitude towards military absentee ballots, or military tends to vote conservative, vote Republican. Not always. I mean, you're going to look at our military; it's gotten pretty woke lately, so it may not be the case. But that's traditionally been the feeling, right? So if you are a Secretary of State and you're holding back the ballots coming in from active military personnel abroad, and you don't count those, first of all, every vote has to be counted. So what justification do you have there? There's none whatsoever. And if that's happening,
1 minute.
that needs to be looked at, that needs to be investigated. And if that's the case, then that is clearly election tampering. And charges need to be leveled, and somebody needs to pay for that. That's totally unacceptable. Why is it so difficult for us to all understand that the design of our country put the power of the people, us, the citizens, are clearly at the ballot box? That's the design of our country. And anything to lessen that, defer that, direct that, tamper with that is unacceptable. And we have a power structure in place right now that's petrified of you making the decisions. And they're doing everything they can to make them for you or not allow you to express yours. But this is going to actually wrap up Friday's edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here at AM 830 WCRN. I want to thank you for inviting me in and spending some time and listening. Again, follow me at Joe Mangi Show, M-A-N-G-I, Joe Mangi Show. Hey, beautiful weekend, folks. Get out there and enjoy it. Joe out.